Yeah, can you see it okay? So that's my son Boaz, and that's the first time that we met. Um, Thank you to Gina, who gave us this picture. This was on his birthday. Yesterday was my son's birthday, and so we celebrated his birthday. Um, but it was kind of regrettable that that we didn't have company to celebrate. We had to FaceTime with family and so forth. But in another way, it was kind of nice because we got to focus just on celebrating him. I don't know about you, but like sometimes when you have those big shindigs with parties and stuff, you forget the main thing. You're so stressed with all the details and all the things that don't matter at all that you forget to do the one thing, which is to remember your first love, to celebrate the thing that you're there to celebrate. We got to celebrate him. And it occurred to me yesterday that, yes, we told him stories of his birthday. We showed him videos and pictures of the day he was born. But yesterday, we didn't celebrate that he was born once. We celebrated, and we celebrate that he lives among us. Our 4-year-old little boy. We celebrate the 4 years he's been with us, that he lives among us, that he teaches us, that he helps us to see the kingdom of heaven like Jesus says. Jesus says, if you don't see the kingdom of heaven like one of these children, you're never going to get it. We celebrate how he challenges us. He does. As long as he is with us, that's how we will celebrate. Not just that he was born once, but that he lives. And that is what we are celebrating today. Not just that Jesus rose from the dead once, but that he lives. The angels in the story that we're looking at will say to the women, why are you looking for the living one among the dead? He didn't rise from the dead once. He lives. He is living, and daily he offers us a way of living, the way of living in the kingdom of heaven now and forever. That's the idea that I bring to you today to hold in your heart. As always, I offer you an idea, and I offer you a story to carry in your heart. Well, the story's going to be you're going to guess what it is. But the idea is that Jesus didn't die and rise from the dead to give us a holiday. He died and rose from the dead and is alive to give us a way of life. But we struggle with that, don't we? Right? We have a way of turning holidays into like moments of remembrance. Right? Like, think about Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Right? We're talking about a guy who marched streets hand in hand with people, was taunted, abused, mocked, imprisoned, and eventually died to establish racial justice in America. And we have a Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and we end up quoting him on that day. I don't think he marched and got arrested and died so he could have a Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I think he marched, got arrested, and died so that we would continue the fight. That he give us a way of like living, because we're not there yet, right? And similarly, this Easter day, Jesus didn't walk the earth as God in the flesh. He didn't teach. He didn't heal. He didn't get flogged and taunted, a crown of thorns on his head. And he didn't rise from the dead so he could have a Easter holiday to remember that he rose from the dead once. He lives and is living among us and is offering us the way of life, the kingdom of heaven, way of life. So I have a question to start for today that before we keep going, we're going to look at that story in just a minute. But there's a question that I have for you. If I can find it. Yeah, here you go. So like I just said, Jesus didn't die and rise to give us a holiday, but he did it to give us a way of life. And by grace, that way is always there. Every day when we wake up, Jesus is there living, offering this way of living to us. We don't have to keep traveling the road we've been traveling unless we choose that. So I'd ask you today, what are one or two words? Hey, there are the dogs. You just told the dogs to be quiet. They won't be. It's okay. What are one or two words to describe the road that you've been traveling? I just said that we're never resigned to the way we've been traveling or the road we've been traveling. What are one or two words to describe the road that you've been traveling? For example, maybe you would say joyful. You don't have to say why. You and God know why. Maybe you would say confusing. You don't have to say why, but you can know that between you and God, you know. Maybe you would say the road you've been traveling is isolated. What are one or two words? Andrew says that's a great word, disorienting. I think that's the main word in the Psalms for the guy who writes, the people who write the Psalms. The one word to describe what they felt in a lot of the Bible is disorienting. What about you? How would you describe? Lynn says peaceful. Mackenzie says fear. Hey, there's my brother-in-law. What's up, BK? Interesting. Hannah says unexpected. What are one or two words to describe the road that you've been traveling? If you were completely honest. So far, people have said it's been a road of fear. Some people said it's been an interesting road, an unexpected road. Andrew said disorienting. What else? What words would you use to describe? Maria said surreal. How would you describe the road you've been traveling? Surprising. Grateful and disconcerting. I love that. It's both at the same time. Challenging. Disjointed. Educational. Distracted. It's been a road of distraction. I can totally relate to that. How would you describe the road that you've been traveling? Has it been hard? Has it been relatively easy? Different? A roller coaster? Challenging? Uncertain? Uncomfortable? Yeah, so many people today are traveling a road they never dreamed they would be traveling. People in our hospitals, teachers, students. Colorful, yeah. Relentless. Hey, Dave. It's a high school friend of mine. Go way back, lonely. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Dave. So the reason I asked that, feel free to keep chiming in as I keep talking. It doesn't mean that I don't see your comment and I don't care. I do care. The reason I ask, how would you describe the road you've been traveling, why I use the term the road. In the first century, the nickname for Jesus' movement was called the road or the way. The same word in the original language, the road or the way. That's why today when I use that phrase, Jesus gave us a way of living. I'm literally talking about the movement he gave us. Yeah, thanks, Doug. Good insight there. I hope that today, here's what I'm hopeful for, that resurrection is how we would describe our road, even with the things that we mention. I hope that resurrection is a part of it. I hope that it's a huge feature of what we do. But if we're going to have that, we're going to have to agree to this. Are you with me today? We're going to have to agree to not go through the motions. Are you with me? I would love nothing better today than to give us a feel-good moment on Easter morning. I would love that. And maybe we will walk away feeling that way. But if resurrection, Jesus' resurrection, is going to characterize the travel or the road that we travel, we're going to have to not go through the motions this morning. We're going to have to let this story really confront us. There's so much more to this story than just feel good. It's not like our Easters. What you're going to see in a minute, that the original Easter, is full of fear, disbelief, and confusion. But it's also full of people that saw this way that Jesus offered them, this road. They decided to detour, and they never came back. And we're here discussing it today. I'm inviting you to a detour today. And what better time than when we've been forced into a detour? Hey, Spencer. So, I'm going to read the story to you. And I invite you to let this story really confront you today. Don't go through the motions. Don't just come here to just have an Easter holiday and go about your life. Let's honor this story and honor our own lives. Let me get a drink of coffee first. So, if you want to follow along, we're looking at Luke's version of the story. Luke is one of the four Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, 4 accounts of Jesus' life. Gospel is a word that they used particularly to write these accounts of Jesus because the empire, the Roman Empire at the time, used that term good news or gospel to describe like when an heir of the royalty was born. And so these folks were saying that isn't good news. This is. So we're in Luke chapter 24, verse 1 through 12. God help us to hear, help us to see. Very early in the morning on the first day of the week. The first day of the week in their time was Sunday, which is one of the reasons we gather on Sunday mornings for worship. Very, very early in the first day of the week. Sorry, I forgot to tell you something. Be listening for a word or phrase or image that stands out to you, because I'm going to ask you about it in a minute. Word, phrase, or image. The women went to the tomb, bringing the fragrant spices they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they didn't find the body of the Lord Jesus. They didn't know what to make of this. Suddenly, 2 men were standing beside them in gleaming bright clothing. The women were frightened and bowed their faces toward the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He isn't here, but he has been raised. Remember what he told you while he was still in Galilee, that the human one, or the Son of Man, must be handed over to sinners, be crucified, and on the 3rd day rise again." Then they remembered his words. When they returned from the tomb, they reported all of these things to the 11 and all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told these things to the apostles. Their words struck the apostles as nonsense, and they didn't believe the women. But Peter ran to the tomb. When he bent over to look inside, he saw only the linen cloth in which Jesus was buried. Then he returned home, wondering what had happened. Okay, your turn. What word or phrase or image stands out to you? A word or phrase or image that stands out to you from that story. They didn't know what to make of this. Yeah. That one stands out, doesn't it? The women and Peter running. We're going to feature the women later on. Wondering. It took the two men appearing to remind the women what Jesus had said. Yes. They said, remember. What else strikes you? A word or phrase or image that strikes you from the story. No one believed the women. It's a theme of the world, isn't it? They were frightened. Absolutely. That one sticks out, doesn't it? What else? A word or phrase or image that sticks out to you. The women. The women who went first to the tomb. That's in another account, Denise, not this one. Good catch. Why are you looking for the living one among the dead? Yeah. A word or phrase or image that sticks out to you. Oh, Dave, thanks to you, buddy. Hope you're well. Word or phrase or image that sticks out to you. Give you a couple more seconds. You all have really hit on the ones that I notice. I think they're there for us to consider. A word or phrase or image, just a couple more seconds. Is there a word? My mom, Mandy, says living. Yeah, that's what we're talking about today, that Jesus didn't just die once and come up from the grave once. He is alive. He is living among us and offers us a way, the way of living. Yeah. Yeah, I notice what you all are saying. Do you see this? How in the original Easter, Jesus didn't come up from the grave and they're like, hey, is everybody, let's have an Easter egg hunt. Let's color some eggs. Let's have a party. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to do an Easter egg hunt with my kids later on. It's not a bad thing, but it wasn't a party. It wasn't a holiday. There was fear, disbelief, and confusion. That's what marked this first scene. Which tells me something about Jesus and the way of Jesus. That if we go after this person, Jesus, and we embrace his way, we are going to encounter some of our deepest fears, confusion, and doubt. And not just once, every day, and at various moments throughout the day. Like some of you said, these people for 3 years had followed Jesus and heard him say, I have to go over here to suffer, die, and then be raised 3 days later. But even at the end, when all this goes down, they're like, what? It didn't stick. For whatever reason, this didn't stick. If we're going to go after this person, Jesus, and experience resurrection on the road we travel in life and share resurrection in the roads we travel with our neighbors, we are going to encounter some of our deepest fears, confusion, and doubt. And if we're not, there's a decent chance we're not walking that way. We're walking something else. I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because I invited us to not go through the motions. I'm saying that to myself. Ross, if you aren't experiencing some of your deepest fears, doubts, and disbelief, you may not make it to resurrection. You may not share resurrection in the world. It's so hard because what Jesus is inviting us to is to, he says to his folks, to us, that he's birthing something new through us, which means that daily, often, we have to let go of the old to embrace the new, or we have to let Jesus shape the old into the new. And what makes it even tougher is that it's not just about us. This account, Luke's account, makes it clear that Jesus didn't just come to get individuals into heaven. No, the good news is that something of heaven is coming to earth. And Jesus comes to confront the injustice of the world. Death in the world, the way the world has gone awry. And he invites us into the renewal work. That way of living, that abundant way of life, here and now and forever. This is hard stuff. It's really hard stuff. And yet, it is the good news. Not that he disappeared from the tomb once, or his body wasn't there. It's that he is risen. That's been what's called the liturgy of the church. It's just a word that means like things the church says in its worship. For ages now, we've said this phrase that Christ has died, Christ is risen, and Christ will come again. Hey, someone just said lost connection. Can you still hear me out there? Am I still with you? Can someone just give me a yes if I'm there? Looks like I got a bunch of thumbs, so we're still good. Okay. Yes, all right, good. It is really hard this way. We're going to encounter some of our deepest fears, disbelief, and confusion. It is going to cost us. It will. But here is the good news. Did you notice this in the story? Notice how all these people have lost it. The disciples have quit. They've slipped away and they've quit. They've gone back home. They hung it up. And yet, the angels said, hey, remember what he said? Remember how he said he's going to show up in Galilee? Even after the disciples had experienced that confusion, that disbelief, that disorientation that Andrew talked about, and they had quit, Jesus said, I won't quit you. I won't quit living among you. I will not quit being alive among you. I will be there every day, and I will offer you this way of living. The kingdom of heaven way of life, which is the best thing. And it's also a very hard thing because we're birthing something new. He shows up to them after they've all quit and says, peace be with you. Whatever road you're traveling right now, he is there. And he is saying, I am alive. I go before you. I went before you to suffer, to die, to confront the injustice of the world, to confront death, to confront sin, and to conquer it all, and to raise up new living things. Will you go with me? Doesn't matter what you were doing yesterday. What about today? Will you go with me? That's the question for us. Will you go with him? Will we go with each other on the road? That's what the church is. People who walk with each other on the resurrection road and share it and walk with people who are disadvantaged, disproportionately affected by things like this. We fight for justice. We practice repentance. We don't just choose comfort, we choose self-denial. We bring new things up from where there are dead things. That's the church. In closing today, I would say this: go be like the women in the story. Always be like the women in the story. They are our model for walking this road. They are our model. The men, they stink. Jesus still loves them and shows up to them. But be like the women. Check this out. They go to the tomb to give Jesus a proper burial because they had to quickly get him into the tomb, and they didn't anoint him yet. So the women say, we want to go anoint our Lord, give him a proper burial. And boom, it hits. You heard the story. They're frightened. He's not there. They don't know what has happened. And the angels show up and say, why are you looking for the living among the dead? And right then, there it is. There's their choice. Will they go on the way that they clearly don't understand, even though he said it? Will they go on the way, or will they say, I'm going home. See you later. This is weird. Bye. Will they go on the way, even though they know, they have a good idea that when they go tell those men, the men are going to say, this is nonsense. And they're not going to believe them. But no, that's not what they do. They said in this moment, we choose the living one. And we choose the way of living with the living one. They go to Galilee. They say he's living. The apostles say it's nonsense to their face. And they choose to be witnesses nonetheless. And we're standing here today. I'm standing here, claiming this way because of them. Your road in life won't quit being disorienting. I hope I've put that to rest in myself, wishing that walking with Jesus wouldn't be so darn disorienting and confusing. But I know I will hope for that. And maybe you will too. So yeah, I give you this idea today to carry in your heart. Jesus didn't die once and come up from the grave once. He is living. He is risen. And he offers us the kingdom of heaven way of living every single day when we get up from bed and put our feet on the ground. It is there before us. In grace, it is there. Walk it. Be like the women, though you know you'll face your fears, your confusion, and the nonsense of it all. Walk in it, with it, and walk with us. Hey, I hope that you have a blessed Easter. I hope that your days from here are described as resurrection days, even as you face death and confusion and fear. Know that you have good company with me and with folks in our church who are walking this road and just as confused as you are. That is definitely true. And yet, here's the promise very at the end of Scripture: all things will be made new. Let's join in the work right now.